Welcome to another episode of the Being and Doing podcast, where we're trying to talk about personal visions of success. And today I have Micha Bakker from Sweden. And normally I start the podcast, as you should be used to now, by saying some of my personal impressions about my guests. And Misha is someone who I started following on Instagram. And the reason I started following him because I love movement. But then the second thing that grasped my attention is that in his capture in the Instagram bio, it says being good at training is cool, but being a good human is cooler. And that's something that really resonated with me, and it kind of prompted me to explore everything he has to offer. And I think starting from there would be a very good point to actually start the interview, because as I mentioned to Misha before we entered into the interview, is that his Instagram is very honest, and I would love to hear how that honesty translates into this interview, basically. So welcome, Misha.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you for
can
having me.
we can we start basically at what inspired you to actually write this sentence in your bio?
Uh, I think that came from quite a lot of years ago when I was with a friend, or were two friends of mine, were building this training company. And at first were just about like passionate about training. It was no plan, no thinking. And then kind of shit hit the fan. So we
Mhm.
got a chance to kind of restart everything, and that's when we started to discuss values and what values do we want to share. And for me personally, I've been highly invested in my own training to the point where I kind of forgot that the remaining 23 hours of my life probably has a more impact on myself and those around me. And yeah, eventually the transition just became quite organically towards, yeah, as you mentioned it, like it's really cool to be good at training and do all these cool feats of flexibility and tricks and stuff, uh, but we often tend to get so invested in our training, and not only physically but also mentally. And a part of me is kind of baffled that we don't have the same kind of preparation and mental effort towards, well, being a good partner or a good son or mom or whatever you are to someone else. Because at the end of the day, I think the best moments of life come from connection. So
Yes, I mean, for me, what you said is basically extremely impactful, because it is always great to strive to achieve a certain level of perfection in one area of life, but then one area is only one area of life, and there are so many complexities outside of that. And that's why I think this resonated with me a lot. And just to backtrack a little bit, can you tell to the audience, who are you? What are you doing? And basically, how would you, let's say, describe yourself in 3 words of whatever choosing you have?
well, my name is Misha. I'm a 33-year-old guy from Sweden who is just trying to find his way through life, trying to ask better questions and hopefully somewhere along the way pick up some answers. Uh, and that's basically who I am. In regards to what I do as a professional, I've basically moved my body my entire life. So I think it just became natural that I followed that to share that with other people. So if we're talking like, what do I do on a daily basis? Well, I help people to help themselves in, I would say, by using physical activity as a tool. And I do that for myself as well. uh, to describe me in three ways. So as soon as you said that, I just got a flashback because I had that question a couple of years ago. And the first three words that came to my mind was a constant existentialistic crisis because I'm always just thinking and thinking, and sometimes I just think too much. So, but I can let you know this. I have three words that I want to guide my 2021, and it is excitement, it is happiness, and it is in Swedish I would say ro, and the closest thing I can translate it to in English would be like a state of peace.
Hmm.
So those three are, kind of guidelines are what will guide me as a person this year.
And I just want to leech on something you said about the constant existential crisis and also always searching for answers, because I'm very much in that realm. I sometimes find that a lot of peace is also like kind of uh, a balance, no? Almost like you are in a search and then you reach a certain moment of equilibrium, and then you continue your search, and then it's again a moment of equilibrium. I mean, the search can still be peaceful, and I guess that's what you're referring as not having peace in that space. But I'm curious, basically, how does your search look like, and why do you contrast it to the peace you achieve when you probably find a certain part of your answers?
Well, I would say that when searching for answers, that's an active decision and an active action. Uh, and the other part, the being at peace, I think it says something in that statement. So it's about letting be, which is
Mm-hmm.
more about being passive. Um, I would say, and I tend to get stuck in doing, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
more than being. And I think I just I really like it as well. So it's a passion of mine to problem solve, and half of problem solving is to articulate the problem. But I tend to get stuck in just trying to articulate it better and better and better. So I forget that I actually have to do something about it to reach some sort of a solution, and then to let go of that so I can let be. Um, but as I said, I think it's a lot of fun too. So
Yeah,
it's difficult to know when to move on because you could stay in that rabbit hole forever. Um,
that's true. But so let's say, what are your tools to pull yourself out of that rabbit hole?
I think it's a lot about kind of checking in with yourself and asking if it's good for you. Is this still good for me? Or you can, I think, so I used to have like this daily habit of reflection and introspective practice, where I got up every morning and I did some checking with my body, and then I had some checking with my mind through meditation, and then I journaled. And I did that for years, and it really had a great impact on my life. But I came to the point um, where I felt like I did it more as a chore. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it was something that I had to do. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to stop everything and see what happens. And nothing really changed until it changed. And now I'm trying something similar, but over a longer period of time. So I had 6 months where I created enough time so I could uh, actively think, which when I do that, usually I go outside for a walk with a question in my mind. Uh, and then I just think about the problem. And then I think some more. And then I try to articulate it in my head. And then I actually record myself with my thoughts around it. Then I listen to that recording because that will let me know, oh, wait, I'm not really, there's something here that's not really resonating with me. So I think again, and then I record again. And at that time, at that period, I sent out like a weekly email. And that was basically the thoughts I had regarding this week. So I actually had to articulate it to other people. And then I went into more of a productive phase where I'm still in. It's been 7 months now, and I think I'm going to be in this phase for like one more month before I take a couple of months off. So it's like on season, off season.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of a daily habit, which I still try to do, just ask myself, is this still bringing value? Is this good? If it's not, is it still worth it? But I try to let go of that and just do now and have this as my on season. And then I know I will stop in about a month to bring back the tools of actively thinking and writing and sharing those thoughts.
And what really strikes me about you is the amount of intention that goes into your life. And I want to also make a detour to bring the old Misha, the little Misha, and then come to how did you build up this kind of intentionality. So I just wanted to ask to tell us what was your childhood like? Because what also struck me on your Instagram is the amount of different gifts you have. I mean, you experience and explore life in so many different levels and dimensions. You are playing music, you are dancing, you are moving, and I'm sure there are many more things that are not shown there. Um, so I'm curious, where was the initial spark for that curiosity?
I think a part of it is my parents and how the kind of safety and love and encouragement they gave me. A part of it is growing up in Sweden, which is a really safe place to grow up in. And by that, I mean that if you were to quote unquote fail in life, the safety net in Sweden is like it's so good. Like the worst thing that could happen, take me starting my company. Like if everything failed, I would still have a place to live and I would still have an income. It wouldn't be good, but I would get some support from the government, which opens up for me to be courageous enough to follow my curiosity. And a part of it is that I wasn't. I shouldn't say I wasn't an unpopular kid, but I definitely wasn't popular when I grew up. So I didn't have a lot of friends, which meant
Mm,
that I had a lot of time. And my dad is from Bolivia, so he has a different culture and a different kind of approach to life. And my mom is kind of like she has an inner hippie within her. So it
mhm,
was quite natural for me to spend a lot of time. Even I remember when I was 12, 13, I was thinking about life and the afterlife and how I want to navigate through my life. And even at that age, I had quite a low self-esteem. No, wait, now I'm going to translate to English. Is it self-esteem? Yeah, might be. No, I had low confidence,
confidence,
but I
yeah.
had I had low confidence, but I had very, very high self value of myself because I knew I was a good person, and that allowed me to really be okay with having all this time and maybe not being so popular and and actually exploring kind of my mind at that age. And eventually, I think it was just it had to take some sort of an expression. and I always like to move my body. I did sports, so that was the first thing, and then it was just about uh, like daring to try something new. So it's definitely a combination of the time, my parents, and the society I grew up in.
Yeah, my brain is going into so many different dimensions of wanting to explore this, but I'll try to start with your parents being Bolivian and Swedish. How much of that diversity has entered your life, and what do you think the values were brought from these different cultures? And you said that, well, I'll stop here and then I can continue.
Well, so my mom is actually half Dutch, half German, and
Oh,
she
wow.
came to Sweden as a 5-year-old. But she's quite Swedish, but to the way she's acting, except for that inner hippie that she has, that I just think is in her. Um, and so even though it's quite similar and close to Sweden, where she comes from and where her past family comes from, it's still something else. And for my dad, who grew up as a poor kid on the street with a family that had to struggle, and then coming to Sweden, I think he has this innate gratitude in him. And so what's really cool, and I admire my dad a lot. And one perspective that I hope I can develop more is that whenever we talk, and you always start the conversation with, "Yeah, how are you?" And he says, "Good." And it's always good. And he means it. And it's so provocative. So I actually told him once, like, okay, it can't always be good. And he was like, no, but whenever it's bad, I think about what's good, and then it's good. And he meant it. And that's so provocative because I think he is at peace with his life and the journey that he has been through. And it really rubs off to me that uh, I don't need to have a lot of things or be a certain way in relation to other people, as long as I am content with who I am towards myself. And that really is something both my parents has not really talked to me about, but they've just acted that way. So, and it might be of cultural differences, or maybe they were just that kind of people.
Hmm.
But that has really been something that has brought kind of like a calm surrounding to the chaos that is life.
Yeah. The funny thing is that, well, I'm from Serbia, and and actually that gratitude also comes a lot from you know that you don't have much, and then when you actually have something, you can see that gap. So, and also there is one thing that I'm thinking, because it's somehow I feel this relation to my own experience, is this constant search that is in us. It just feels like there is something unresolved inside, always, that we are trying to satisfy in some way. And I'm wondering, how much did you think about that? Or how deep have you reached to understand where is that unresolved residing in? Um, and the funniest thing for me is that my current process is that I'm realizing that there is a lot of trauma which I personally don't even recognize as one. And I'm wondering, have you explored those kind of avenues?
Well, I might be blind to myself. That is like a possibility, but I think I've been very fortunate enough to not really have any major emotional trauma, uh, not in my upbringing, that I would say. Um, so that, I mean, I've always been uh, hesitant towards what beliefs that are true or not, which creates some sort of an uncertainty in me that makes me want to get answer to certain questions so I can feel more certainty. But I think it's more of a perspective of life than any experience I've had. Um, and I've one thing I've actually for the longest time wanted to go to some sort of a therapist to dive deeper into it, because in a way I'm like, I need to have some sort of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course it was tough at school sometimes not being asked to join everyone, but at the same
And what
time I was really content with being with myself as well, so it didn't really matter that much.
I'm
uh,
curious, what do
yeah.
you think? So sometimes, this lack of socialization is something um, that also now I'm realizing screams in a way trauma. So I'm just wondering, what do you think has separated you so much from your friends at that age? Was it your life experience? Was it your appearance? Was it your mental lookup?
Yeah, I think it just was. I think it was on me primarily, like my insecurities,
Mm-hmm.
and the way I viewed myself. Uh, because I got quite a good socialization because I played a lot of sports and was in a lot
Sports,
of
yeah.
teams. Yeah, so and I always felt more confident there because I was really good at sports, but I was still pretty shy in the locker room, so I didn't take a lot of space except for on the pitch. Um, and I had a couple of friends, and I just spent a lot of time with them. Um, but in hindsight, I really think it was my own insecurities. But because at grade 6, which is when you're 12 here in Sweden, I actually got like an award in school for being the best friend in school. And I was like, but I don't perceive myself to have a lot of friends. So I don't know why I got this. Maybe it was just because I treated people nice and they appreciated it. But from my perspective, I thought, well, I don't have the courage to hang around people. And once I did, because I once I changed school to like a different school where nobody knew me, I had a do-over. So I just stepped in and was the person I wanted to be. And from that moment on, everything changed. So I really think it was uh, within me that I just had to allow myself to show other people who I was.
And yet, just one last question around that is sometimes when we are um, perceiving ourselves not to have friends, but actually people perceive us as someone who is very good and nice and lovable, that means that in some way, the way we want to be loved and what our needs are have not been met. And that's why in some instance we didn't perceive as if there is friendship. So I'm just curious to hear, where do you think there's a gap, or whether you think that sometimes there is a gap between you understanding your needs, voicing them, and being able to honor them and kind of ask them from other people.
Well, in my case, it's probably, and in many people's cases, I think it's the belief that I am not this type of person. And then you just
Mm.
latch onto that belief because that belief provides a safe place, because then I don't have to take any risks. And I mean, it gets easier to move away from that belief the more you get to know yourself in the context of whatever the context is, and the better support system you have. Uh, and I mean, I still have that belief in many cases, but it's just It's difficult. I wish I had a good answer to how I deal with it, but I'm not really sure. I'm still a work in progress. It's still hard to even notice. Even now, when I'm more conscious about it, it's hard to notice when I have that belief and when that belief is merely just reality. Like that is how it
Yeah.
is. Um, so
Yeah, I mean
yeah,
it's always interesting to see how much those beliefs actually kind of limit us into reaching the full potential. And I'll
definitely.
just I want to come back to this in a kind of circle through movement, but I want to transition into movement.
Yeah.
So you said that you have started with a lot of sports. So I want to hear which sports, how, and I also know you started in yoga, then you went into lifting and weight work, and then flexibility, which is a very similar to my journey. So I really want to explore all of that. So let's start from the beginning. What did you start with first? Moving.
Well, I did all kinds of sports when I was younger, but my two primary sports was football or soccer.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sport in Sweden called floorball, which is kind of like indoor hockey-ish. Um, that's the simplest way to describe it. And I did those two a lot. And from the age of 13 to 18, I went to like sports schools as well. So I had extra sport in school. And my primary, the one I really wanted to, this is quite fun. This says a lot about how much I thought as a kid. My goal was to become the second best player in the world because I was really good and I played so this is a sport where Sweden is one of the best countries in the world. And I played in one of the best teams in Sweden. And there was one guy in the team where I was like, the talent of this guy, I don't have. I know that. I might be able to work harder, but I don't have his talent. And he was working hard. So I was like, okay, most likely I won't be as good as him if we both reach our full potential, but I will try to be the second best. And that's goddamn good, that too. So I really strive for that. And during sports schools, I got the opportunity to try out basically every sport there is, from curling to martial arts to fencing, dancing. And then I got a knee injury.
Oh
And
wow.
even though the healthcare system in Sweden is pretty good, and it's because it's cheap, I didn't really get the help that I needed. So it was a meniscus injury, and it could have taken like 2 months for me to get back, but it took 2 years. And that was between the ages
Oh.
of 18 to 20, which were quite crucial because that was the time I was going to take the big step to the big league. And at that point of time, you get your first job, you get your first income. I got a girlfriend. So once my knee was better, I didn't have the same motivation to go back because for the first time in my life, my existence wasn't circling around my sport. I had a life outside of that. Um, so that kind of just the sport kind of just went to the side naturally. And I still ate. Like I practiced 35 hours a week, which meant that I gained a lot of weight. And that was my introduction to where I got to today, because at one point I was like, okay, I need to get a gym card because I need to lose all this weight. I think I gained like 25 kilos in 6 months.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that was like not from training; it was purely sitting and eating. Um, so yeah, I went through the kind of classical phase of first you do some like useless bro bodybuilding to have nice biceps and chest so you can go to the beach, and then you do the same thing but you do it a little bit better. and then you want to get strong. And then so I started with more barbell and powerlifting and weightlifting. And from that point, I kind of got introduced to a little bit of CrossFit, which was some gymnastics. So that kind of got incorporated into my practice. And I've been fortunate enough to know a lot of dancers growing up, and I always envied them. But I was also always too scared to try dancing. But eventually, I found a coach, a guy who had a background as a professional dancer, but he also did strength training. So I asked him, can you make a program where the basis is still strength training, but add in some ballet exercises? So it was still like safe zone. I could do it at the gym. So I started doing some plies and some, yeah, pirouettes. And that kind of opened up the door to like more yoga and then flexibility training and gymnastics rings, and now it's just all a mix of everything. um, so yeah, it's been quite a diverse path, especially the last 5 6 years. I try to uh, give different kind of physical activities an honest chance, and then just taking the parts that I find useful for me.
And that's what I actually really appreciate, because what I'm discovering, because I personally started with, well, actually, I have a very similar story, but uh, recently I was doing yoga and then I was doing it quite a lot, but I saw that these constant and repetitive movements are not doing good to my body. And then I somehow introduced the weight training, and now I'm with the weight training in the yoga, and I'm realizing, well, I'm reaching the limits there. I can do more, but if I go into more, it feels like it's going to harm my body. And I'm just curious, where do you think there is this balance between health and fitness and just performance and fitness? Because I feel like it's a very fine and thin line, which, if we go over to the performance, can really easily go into injuries. So I just wanted your opinion as someone who is in the industry, if you want.
Well, the concept of balance is, I think, it's a misunderstood concept, because I feel like most people think about balance like a fixed point,
Mm.
whereas it is a fixed point, but it's not a sustainable point. And if anything, like right now, I'm practicing a lot of hand balancing, handstands, and that really makes it clear that there is no such thing as balance. There's only counterbalancing. So what you want to be better at is counterbalancing, because you won't stay in balance. You will go to one of the either side. So what you'll need to learn to do is, how do I get back if I go too far? So instead of having this point where we try to find and to stay at, just build build like a spectrum of, this is the spectrum that I want to be in, and in that spectrum I can go in either direction. But once I get out of that spectrum, that's where I need to pull myself back. And where that is, uh, it's impossible to say for each and every one. But I think just having that perspective allows for greater flexibility, partially
And
to,
less fear, I guess.
yeah, definitely. Because then you could actually say, okay, for X amount of time, I will go a little bit more towards this side. But if I reach this point, the end of my spectrum, I will pull back, and maybe I will just pull back, or maybe I'll go to the other side. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I was imagining that, actually, I had a very similar idea, but in a different metaphor. It's, when I was doing yoga, you go to the end ranges. And for me,
Mhm.
balance is literally, so you go to the end range, you see how much you can stay there, but balance is pulling back off. Because it's not that you want to not move,
Yeah.
is that you want to explore in a safe space, in a way. So I'm just wondering, how do you create that safe space for yourself? Because you have pushed your body to beautiful edges, and just seeing your Instagram posts, it's just come almost like kind of a pleasure for the eyes. So I'm just curious, how did you push those edges um
Oh,
productively?
I like trying trial and error, sometimes being stupid, for sure. And I wouldn't recommend people to do it my way necessarily, because every now and then I know I will go beyond my limit, but I take a calculated risk. So I guess some people would call that unhealthy. I would just call that like taking
Knowledgeable.
in, yeah, information, uh, as long as long as it's not too stupid. Like for instance, um, without any running training, I went out and I was like, okay, I'm going to see how far I can run, before things start to hurt, and then I run some more because I want to test my mind and if I can move beyond that. So I think I ran like 150 kilometers in maybe 15 days, and the last one run was like 35 kilometers, and I got some knee pain after that, but I knew it was gonna pass. It was like, okay, I will probably be in pain in my knees for a month, and that's okay. That's I'm willing to make that bargain. Now, I wouldn't recommend people to do so. People have to pave their own path. But kind of to circle back to your original question, it's trial and error. It's conscious decision. It's always asking questions. How, not only how did it go, like the measurable outcome, but how did I feel? When did I feel what? Do I want to feel the same thing? Again, do I not? Okay, in what way will I make a small change that will have a small impact on the next training session? So it's constantly asking questions, getting answers, taking that information, making an evaluation, and then make a new decision, based upon the new you that you are, because you change for every day too. So you might not want to go in the same direction tomorrow. And if you don't want to go in the same direction tomorrow, is it because you truly don't want to go there, or is it because you don't feel like going there today? So, and it's just asking questions, getting answers, and trying to be as honest as self with yourself, which is not an easy thing to do at all.
That's what I wanted to ask. How do you practice brutal self-honesty?
It's I think I've become so. I think it's quite obvious when you're um, lying to yourself, because you get a physical feeling in your body where you know, like, okay, this does not align with who I am or the values I have, and you can still move past that and do that thing anyways. But you will feel probably guilt or shame or something like that, because you know this is not who you want to be. But I think it's just, as the more you do it and the more you consciously do it, the better you get at guessing if it is on an honest thought or not. But you will never know. It's just trying to become better at guessing.
Yeah, and knowing yourself basically. So, like, honesty is kind of in conjunction with the more you know yourself, the easier it is to be, I guess, honest to oneself. And this brings me actually to the topic and to the core of what we want to explore is success. And I want to start with the question of when was the first time you were aware of the concept of success? And when was the first time you actually felt successful? And when you were aware of what the concept is, what was it? What was it for you at the time?
Um, I think the first time I was aware was the first time I kind of got aware about, well, rich people, I suppose,
Mm,
because that is a quite common perception of success. So growing up, seeing successful people on television, it was like it was the top percentages of people, the best in what they do. Uh, so, and the same goes with sports. I mean, I was into sports, so successful players was the best players in the best teams. So I guess that was my first contact with success. Um, but I mean, that must have been when I was in, I don't know, kindergarten, primary school. So I can't really say a lot about what I thought, but that would probably be the first time I got in contact with the concept of success. What was you
And
asking?
the second part is when was the first time you yourself felt successful?
Hmm. Uh, I don't know. I can try to come up with a story in where I think I felt successful, but since my definition and perception of success has
Has changed.
changed over time, I'm not really sure if I felt what I now deem to be successful at that
Mm-hmm.
time. Uh, but I would probably say something in relation to when I did my sport and got into this great team with the best players, and or when we won trophies and stuff like that. That was a success, at least.
And then in that realm of the concept of success is changing for you over time, how do you think it has evolved from that initial perception to what do you deem to be successful now?
Well, at first, I would say I'm going to try to think out loud now because I don't think I've
Sure.
ever thought about this. So if I just see it in my head, success for me as a kid was becoming the best player in the sport that I loved. And then success became like the visual representation of success was a suit and a nice car. uh, and what it is now is it's more because now success is diverse because success is both the destination and the journey depending on the context. So if I wanted to grow my business, let's say from point A to point B, arriving at point B would be a success, but I could also feel successful during the journey or not feel successful depending on if it's a project that I am passionate about, it's if it's how I want to spend my time, if it makes me feel like I'm growing, if it is a positive experience. So it's kind of depends on the context of the conversation, if we're talking about the success from a destination point of view or success from the journey.
So you would now consider success being part of living in a way, kind of a concept which is I feel successful if I feel fulfilled almost during my path towards reaching a goal, let's say.
Well, I can feel both successful and unsuccessful at the same time because I
Mm-hmm.
might feel unsuccessful with not being at the destination, but I might feel successful in my journey and vice versa.
Aha.
So it becomes multi-layered.
Oh, I
And
love this answer. I have to say, sorry, continue.
yeah, and I mean, there's also different types of emotions that are connected to success, and there's different degrees of each and every of those emotions. So yeah, it really depends on the context and the state of mind that I am in, because that will really either let forth what I have within me. Because if I stop and if I think about it, I would say in a way that I'm quite successful right now in my life. In one way, in certain destinations that I want to get to, which I'm not at, I wouldn't say I'm successful in regards to those. But uh, living the life I live it it can sometimes baffle me how fortunate I am to have the life that I have.
Yeah. I mean, that's also interesting that sometimes we chase or we get to the destination which we always imagined. And then we see, oh my God, there is so much more. It's almost like perpetual expansion of desires. So, and especially I feel like for the individuals the individual the kind of you are, that will that will happen till the rest of your life,
Yeah.
that search will somehow never stop. And I want to continue on that note. When did you actually felt that the biggest battle you were going for is the one inside yourself, and the successful feeling was coming from the fact that you felt you won over yourself?
Oh, I think I'm quite. I've been trying to improve uh, my ability to acknowledge when I actually win those battles, because I'm I think I have a tendency to move on to the next battle before acknowledging, hey, I did this. Um, but yeah, I mean, there are some clear, obvious experiences where I've really faced fears. Um, but then there's the more impactful ones, which are the everyday ones, and all the doubts that you have every day, and all the opportunities you have to deviate from who you wish you acted as. So every time I make a conscious decision that either gets me back to the path or keeps me on the path, that I would say that is a win. Um, but to give a clear example of a bigger one that I'm really proud of, is that I have people think I like argumenting, uh, but I do have a fear of conflict. And I think that comes from a fear of being left out, maybe. And but I rarely, I want to say never, but that's not true. But I rarely don't take the talk with a person if I know we need to have a talk. We need to talk about this, the difficult conversations, either because it might change the relation we have or because it leaves me vulnerable to that person. Um, but every time I get that feeling of, oh, wait, I don't want to have this talk, I take that, and that's something I'm really proud of. Uh, yeah.
This is I was just looking at you and I was thinking how incredible y- how you have this incredible way to be in life and kind of leech on very specific topics, but then have like also a meta understanding of your thinking, which
I
is
spent a
very
lot of time with
interesting.
myself.
I know, I know. And then I wanted to ask you, what do you think is one of the beliefs, it can be one or many, that you have or you have had, and you think was a really big impediment to reaching a certain level of success or like certain version of success that you had in your mind?
Oh, it's the one we talked about earlier. The I am this kind of person, or
Mm-hmm.
rather, I am not this kind of person.
Mm.
Because I don't know that. Well, if I try to like take a bigger perspective and take a few steps back, who am I to decide who I could be? Like, I don't have enough knowledge about how the world works to be able to say, like, you'll never be able to do that because you're not that kind of person. But still, I often believe in that thought, and that hinders me from taking actions that I at the time would like to take. Hopefully, it doesn't hinder me from any major experiences, because it would be horrible to in 50 years time to look back and just think, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. I mean, you probably have some smaller ones along the way, but yeah, that's something that will probably be an ongoing battle for the rest of my life. But hopefully, I will get stronger and try to like override that voice. Um,
I mean, just the fact that you have done it many times before, I'm pretty sure that I'm sure you will be able to do it many times again.
Yeah, the
Um,
other thing is like, so one thing about my industry, if I'm going to take that example, there's a lot of trainers and coaches or whatever you want to call them that says like, yeah, you need to go outside of your comfort zone. And the way they get out of their comfort zone is to try something new in the gym or whatever area of practice they have. And I'm like, no, but getting out of your comfort zone is getting outside of the gym and trying something that you haven't done. And once you are at that point, you will know because then you will really be insecure about yourself. So it doesn't matter how many times you've tried something new at the gym, because the arena of the new battle will be new. And so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, a lot of times I've worked past that belief, but I'm not sure it will help me because the next arena might be different, and then it's
yeah.
starting from scratch all over again.
But that's actually what I noticed about you, that you have that courage to do so. Because I feel when we call arena are just this, what you call arena are basically psychologically confined spaces, with a certain framework. And I already see that you have gone out of those places many, many times. So I feel like, yeah, I'm somehow not afraid for you, but I really like what you're saying here, and this is something we can explore as well. Um, how even if you're most successful in a sport, or in an arena, that is still a very psychologically safe
Yeah.
place and a confined place. And some this brings me kind of to the topic of courage. Like, what is courage for you? And I kind of have a sense of the answer, but I want to hear it verbalized.
Uh, I think courage has it's. I think it's two things. At least I think it's right now, because I haven't thought about courage in a long time. But I would say it's partially confidence based on previous experiences. So the perception you have of how strong you are in yourself in relation to what you're about to do. But that's only half of the thing. I think the other half is the support system,
Mm.
because it sure as hell is easier to jump when you know that if I fall, there will be 10 people to catch me. Uh, so a and that's a big reason too why I think that a lot of times when people have put courage on me when I do something, for me at that point, that wasn't courageous because I felt so safe knowing that if I fell, there would be so many people that gladly would catch me. So yeah, so those two parts, I think, is what builds up my courage, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking even now because I had someone asking me, telling me, "Oh my God, you were so courageous to do this and this," and then I realized that that was not an internal feeling, exactly because of what you're describing, that you had the knowledge that you will be able to do it, and on the other side, you also had the feeling that I have so much support that when I do it, I will definitely have a shoulder to cry on
Yeah.
if everything goes south. Um, and then I'm curious, what are the people that informed your visions of success, and the concepts of success that you have?
Uh, how I view success today, I would say it's partially my parents, definitely, because So before this conversation, I asked to get some of the questions or topics sent to me so I could think a little bit about them. And when I read this question, I read it in another way than it was asked. Because for me, when I hear the question, it's more like, who are the people that reminds you that uh, you need to prioritize acting out of a place of love, and prioritizing love,
Mm.
because that's the foundation of success. And when I thought about the question in that way, um, I was like, oh, well, definitely my mom and dad and the way they're acting and they have behaved and the way they show up. Uh, but also like some musicians and the lyrics they write that just, there's especially like a Swedish artist that I don't listen to that often, but every time I do, it kinds of like, it feels like he shines light on the corners that I'm afraid to show because it leaves me so vulnerable. And once I see those, I'm like, wait, there's so much love to be revealed here and to act out towards other people and towards myself. But then there's also like one house guru that I had building the former business with my friends was Simon Sinek, who
Mm.
is just like the way he talks about success and how he always brings it back to how we behave in relation to each other and ourselves. It's so people who reminds me to act from a place of love, I would say, and that would be mostly the people like that, but it could be anyone, friends, uh, yeah, anyone.
And it's a great segue, and I have two questions that really are burning now. One is acting from a place of love. It's such a beautiful kind of framework. And how do you act in a place of love, from a place of love towards yourself? Because yesterday I had read your self-love kind of Instagram thread,
Ooh, that was a long
and
time ago.
yeah, but it was very good. It was actually extremely helpful to me. And so I would love if you could share a little bit of those tools, or the ones that have evolved over time. Um, and and yeah, just to stay on the topic of self-love a little bit.
Okay, so I think there's, I want to start by saying I think there's a big misconception about self-love in the way, at least I see it through social media, where it's all about being nice towards yourself and accepting who you are today. But I think that leaves out uh, who you could be, because that might be two different actions. Um, so the tools I used to use was the like meditation, journaling, active reflection, talking with people, getting their opinions, because who am I to know if what I'm thinking is a good thought? Um, but and all of those practices kind of went a little bit towards the side. And the question I have now that I ask myself is this good for me? Because good might be something that I really don't want to do, but that I will be happy that I did, that I will be proud over that I did, that will show me that I am more of the person that I would like to be and that I could become. And I think that ongoing growth is a big part of self-love. And sometimes it's being nice, uh, but and sometimes it's doing the things that you want to do and allow yourself to, for instance, be happy. People are shit at being happy. When things are going well, they want to sabotage it, myself included. It just happened the other day where I got so happy. I was like, wait, I got scared because I was like, I'm not allowed to be this happy. Um, yeah, but it comes back right now to like, is this good for me? Because that would
And
be act out of love.
and actually, where do you feel like sometimes you are getting stuck in the process of acting from love and acting from a place of self-love? What are the most pitfalls, if you want, that you fall into?
Oh, the classic one, and this happens every day. it, it's being caught up in doing so much that you forget to take a step back and just check in with yourself. Is this how I would like to do it? Is this how I would like to act? And especially if there's something that you do quite frequently, because then you can kind of go on autopilot. Uh, so all of those moments and I mean, social media, and not social media because social media, but maybe the phone is a better way to say.
Yeah.
Uh, to I caught myself yesterday actually. I was going back home from work, and I was picking up my phone. I was sitting on the metro, and I was like doing the thing you do. You scroll and you look at stuff, and you're just mindlessly in that process. And then I looked up and outside the window of the metro, and right now we have a lot of snow. It's like winter wonderland, and I've been wishing for this kind of snow for so long, and it just hit me like, Misha, what are you doing? You really wanted this now. Like, put away your phone and just look outside and be happy about the fact that it is so. And yesterday I was lucky to kind of catch myself, but a lot of times I don't. I sit there with my phone or my book or whatever else I want that to just kind of pass time. Um, so that happens every day. Hopefully, with practice, you become better, as with most things. So yeah,
And we're also human, I guess. So
yeah,
sometimes we won't do it, and that will be, I guess, fine.
yeah. And
But
the society we live in kind of encourages uh, to go on autopilot and
yes,
uh, to pass time instead of spend time.
yes, yes. Um, and in the fact that you're using the word love so freely, I want to get to a question of being a man at this time, day and age. Um, because it is beautiful to hear someone using that word with so much freedom and so much openness, where sometimes what is expected from a man is to be not vulnerable, to present themselves as someone who has no flaws and who is this strong person. How do you think of, let's say, masculinity and being a man in general?
You know what? To be honest, I really don't know what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I haven't been able to like reach a clear, well articulated conclusion. Uh, I think it's difficult for most people, regardless of gender, to uh, allow themselves to be who they think they are and who they would like to be. And growing up as a man, I think there's certain aspects like showing vulnerability that is quite difficult. Um, and yeah, I think I've been fortunate, as I said, with my dad kind of being from South America. And I imagine it's similar in Serbia. Like
Mm,
the love you have for your family is something that you really cherish. So uh, showing love becomes something that you do on a daily basis. Uh, and that's at least one expression of love that you get into contact with. Um, so that opens up me to at least be expressive and vulnerable about that to someone. And I don't think I think there's a lot of people. I'm going to talk out from the perspective of growing up in Stockholm, which is the capital of Sweden, uh, a really progressive city, where success matters a lot, and production and being time efficient is is of the highest value. And I think a part of that makes people get caught up in the doing, uh, which takes them away from being, which then leads to the fact that uh, they have issues expressing, for instance, love, even within their family. I mean, I have many friends that they've never said "I love you" to their parents, and the parents doesn't they don't express it to them. Like after the age of, I don't know, 4 or 5, when you say it all the time. Um, and I mean, that builds up a barrier, because if you can't do that with the people that you're supposed to trust the most, how are you supposed to reveal who you are to other people outside of that circle? Um, this is me digressing. As
No,
I
no,
said,
it's
I'm
fine.
not really sure. I think there are a lot of difficulties, and so here's what I hope for. I hope that in 50 years' time, we will look back and we will all say to each other, how stupid of us that we didn't already have emotional training in school like we
Yes.
have today. Because that at least provides some sort of a space where you actively can explore yourself. And maybe you're not, because it would still be in school with kids, so maybe you won't be uh, comfortable enough to express what you feel then or think then, but at least you have start to think and feel about it. So that is what I hope to, and I hope that will solve a lot of unresolved personal, emotional issues and problems that we have within ourselves.
And that's also something I have observed about you. You are in really intimate contact with yourself. And it is very beautiful to see when person has that. And I'm just wondering, how did you kind of reach that level of vulnerability towards yourself in a way?
I think towards myself, I've always been quite honest and vulnerable. I might have not been able to share that with other people, um, until much later. But so here's the thing: I think it's a little bit. We talked about this before. The how our beliefs kind of stops us and the perception we have ourselves. So one thing that I realized when I started to be more vulnerable and share more of myself and be more of an open book is that people really didn't make a big deal out of it. And they weren't abusive with what I was sharing. So I think I actually kind of, when that hit me, uh, I just went to the other side of the spectrum and became this person that would openly share almost, not everything, but close to everything with anyone who wants to know. And for many years, I had kind of a rule for myself that is, if a person is brave enough to ask the question, then I will answer. Then I will answer it, even if I don't know you. If you ask me a very personal question, I will most likely answer it. And although I'm not I'm still quite the same, maybe not to the same extent,
Mm.
but I would say I have maybe. I know there's a lot of people that say like you have to earn my trust,
Yeah.
and I get so like, oh, because I think if I start a relationship with giving you my full trust, I I allow you to show the best person of yourself to me, because now the space that you're inhabiting is more safe. and you don't have to show everything, but at least you will feel a little bit more safe to show yourself. So someone has to kind of take the lead and the charge, and I'd be happy to be that person. And if you abuse my trust, of course, I will reduce that trust because I'm not stupid about it. But I'd rather give you my full trust and let you lose it than have to earn my trust, because it will, as I said, provide you with a situation where you can be the best person that you are. And there's actually quite, I know there's been studies where they give students like an A in before the term, and then the teachers say like, okay, all of you, regardless of how you performed last year, you have an A. Now you can sustain your A or you can lose it, and then you have another class and they have to earn their A's, and the first group always performs better. And I think that says a
Yes.
lot. And if anyone's gonna share my story, I'd rather it be me than someone making up my story. So I
Yeah.
think that's how I became or how I am the person I am today in regards to vulnerability and sharing of myself. It's my story, and I'm the one who wants to say it. And if I can invite you to grow with that, then that's just a bonus.
I mean, this is also, I like the fact that you share. So there is this difference between wanting to overshare and put yourself on another person almost aggressively, and the other thing is to really be willing to share who you are, which I feel like that's what you're doing. So that's it's a quite a beautiful thing to see. And I was also curious there, in those terms. It's this invitation uh, for the other people to um, to not be afraid then to show themselves up. And in order to have that invitation, you also need to not be afraid of the worst inside yourself, which you kind of briefly touched on by saying, oh, when I show myself, people didn't really think it's a big deal. So I was just curious, before you were able to kind of share more and more, what was the thing that you were almost like kind of the most ashamed of, or was like this feeling of like, oh, this is a thing I would really want to express, or I'm just like not sure myself, but it seems so tricky to share it with the world.
Well, there's a there's a lot of things. I mean, just this conversation or this type of conversation, because it could be quite intimidating for people to have this conversation. And if if I want to share these thoughts, so there's also a difference in like what do I want to say and what does the person need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I might scare away someone if I just throw all of what I have out there to them if they're not ready for it, and because they might not be able to be ready to share it back. So I guess that's a fear of some sorts. But then there's also, as you touched upon, like experiences where I still feel some sort of guilt or shame in relation to, and those are the trickiest one. Um, and I would say that's the line where I draw between personal stories and private stories.
Mm-hmm.
So the private stories are more for the inner circle, until they until I get that resolvement of the shame or guilt or whatever embarrassment, and now I can make it personal because now I feel like I can honestly stand for it. Um, yeah. What was your
I
question?
really,
Sorry, I
you
felt like.
you answered pretty well, actually. You answered with a meta answer, which is really great. I was aiming for like sharing a small snippet of the shameful part, but you actually made a very good distinction of
Well,
how
I
difficult
can do
is.
that as well if you want to.
Why not? Like,
So
let's do it. Yes.
So one thing that I still struggle with a bit with, or struggle quite a lot with, that I have, uh, that I'm very hesitant to share with people, is the fact that I feel like I can be a better brother towards my siblings, and that I've spent most of my grown life being a person or a professional that helps other people. And given the fact that I'm quite confident in myself and what I'm willing to share, there's a lot of people that tend to latch on to me and that uses me. No, not uses sounds so bad, but that use me as a support system. Um, and I can only handle a certain degree of. I can only be so much, and sometimes I prioritize away my siblings for other people, and that's something that I struggle a lot with. And yeah, and I think the major reason why I struggle with it is because I am not making any big changes of behavior or action. That's probably not. That's probably because I don't know how I want to deal with it. But that's something that's really close to the chest.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is when you share these shameful things, it's always much bigger inside than when you actually externalize it. So that's why I was wanting to hear something, because it always feels inside that it's something unresolvable, something very difficult, almost heavy. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
when you kind of put it outside, it just, people would say, oh yeah, maybe these are the ways that we can help, and that's it. You know. But yeah, I'm really happy with the fact that we had like a meta answer and like a very specific way of dealing with the question. And I'm now curious, because you change a lot over time, but how would a successful day look like for you now, or how many versions of a successful day you have?
oh. uh, so a couple of years ago, I used to do this exercise called the perfect day, where
Oh,
I basically, for every 15 minutes of the day, I would write out, okay, so this would be the perfect day. So it would be where I am, at what time, what I was doing, what I was eating, with who I'm being, and all of that. And I had like a perfect day in my mind for so many years. And nowadays I struggled with doing that exercise because I don't have a perfect day, like a clear vision of a perfect day. And I don't know if that's because I don't have a clear vision or because I have no need for one perfect day, that I'm more content with having good days. Uh, so a successful day would be, there's almost as many answers to this as many days I will have to live, but it could be just a regular day. Like, I celebrated my birthday last month, and given the pandemic and the circumstances, it was basically just a regular day, but with the permission of not uh, having to be as productive. So I allowed myself to be like, okay, do whatever you want to do with your work. And yeah, but then it was just like another day. I got up, I took a walk around my lake, I worked a bit, then I moved my body, had some dinner with my housemate, which is my best friend, and it was just a regular day. But I was incredibly happy. Um, another successful day would be to a day where I do some sort of adventure and like reach the top of that mountain or the volcano or the deepest point of or like diving through coral reefs. Like it's just a
yeah.
different kind of success, different degrees, but it's the same.
I mean, I guess also the shift is from I how does it look like to how do I feel? So
Mhm.
I guess a perfection is measured by how you feel rather than how does it look like on the outside, I guess.
Yeah, and I
And
mean, I would like to. I mean, the thing that I miss in my life now are the highs. So I feel like the emotion of feeling content and grateful of the life that I have, which is it's incredible. Uh, yeah, that's one type of success. But I do miss the adventures that are kind of limiting through like pandemic issues and reasons, partially at least. Because those peak moments, they have something. I mean, I wouldn't want to be euphoric for every second of my life, but every now and then it's nice to have those
yeah,
moments.
yeah, I know what you mean. I think everyone knows what you
Yeah.
mean. And I'm curious, what was one truth about reality that you were maybe unwilling to accept for the longest time?
Mhm. Oh, okay. It is a truth that I am still unwilling to accept. Uh, and the truth is that, okay, so circling back to my backstory, um, I had this goal, this objective with my life in relation to my sports. And as I stopped performing or stopped playing my sport, I kind of was out a Northern Star, but then quite quickly that got replaced by another one that I've always felt, and it is that I've always someday wanted to call someone my wife, and I wanted to have kids with that person, and that's been something that I've always wanted my entire life. Like I wanted to become a husband and a dad. Um, and a truth that a truth that I'm willing to accept or unwilling to accept that I really struggle with is that, well, it might be the case that I won't have that. I might still, but it might not happen. Uh, and the thought of that, not being able to call someone my wife and not raising a child, that's a really scary thought that most of the times when that thought hits me, I just push that away. Um, Maybe it's something I should work with, or maybe I should just let that thought be. I'm not sure, but that's a scary truth about reality.
Yeah, we can talk after we finish the interview, but that is a very interesting thought there. Um, and then, what do you think was maybe a very difficult change that you had to make in either your personal makeup or your professional work or your mobility work that really was one of the most challenging ones that you needed to bring in your life in order to have your life progress towards where you want it to be?
Ooh, I think that it's one of the ones that I'm trying to share with the people that I know and work with, and it is that that there is a lot of strength within you, a lot of resiliency, or call it anti-fragility, call it whatever you want. But there's a lot of you. Maybe that's the way to put it. You are not as fragile as you think. That was a big change in the perspective of how I view and use my body, but also my mind. And I think, unfortunately, I think most people get fed that belief to them, and that change in belief can, yeah, it can have the biggest impact because that. as to circle back to courageous, it makes you more courageous in the endeavors you want to undertake.
Yeah. I mean, I can just give a snippet of a personal story there, is that I actually have been um, weightlifting for just maybe half a year now, but my progress has been incredibly fast. And my mom is constantly telling me, don't do it, you will break your spine, you will do this, you will do this. And actually, I just have to constantly fight in my brain saying, no, 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 but the body is more resilient. And the reason I'm starting to believe that is just because I see and I feel how resilient it is over time when I'm training. So I actually, what is beautiful about weight training is that it really teaches you how much the body is capable, and how much space there is that we have just not using as potential.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, I know a lot of people. I don't think these. Whoops. Sorry, it was a call. I just have to put it on flight
No
mode.
worries.
There we go. I think there's yeah. So there's two views that don't necessarily need to be opposing each other, but for some reason we only take one into consideration. And there's a lot of people like, yeah, be smart about your training because that's how you stay healthy and injury free. And sure, that is a good advice, but I would say maybe the better advice would be don't be stupid, because you don't need to be smart as long as you're not stupid, because then you'll allow for more space to work within. Uh, and that will just provide you with a better outcome. So just don't be stupid. And if you can, from time to time, be smart.
Yeah, yeah. And then I read something, so it would give me just 1 second to
Mhm.
open the my screenshot. So there is one thing that you wrote on one of your posts, which I really love, and you say that you as a coach, what you're teaching people is how to make your body and mind a tool that gives you endless possibilities to explore and experience life. And I found that amazing because sometimes as people we strive to improve for performance, and actually the reason we are training our bodies is actually to explore and experience life. So I just really want your comment on what do you think about this, and why is this sentence in your feed, and yeah, what's the philosophy around it, let's say.
That exact sentence actually came from the time when we worked on the company to like articulate our values and what we wanted to share. And because in the uh, fitness or health or physical activity industry, we tend to mix sport, like training for sports and training for health or for life, I would say. And I think it's difficult to, because some people do both at the same time. So and where we find most impressions or inspiration is probably from the people that are training it for sports, and those people should train for performance, but a part of their peak performance is the experience of the peak performance itself. So they circle around to the experience itself. It's just that it will be in a shorter moment, whereas for maybe you and me, that the major experience is outside of the training and the performance. Um, and I really think that at the end of the day, it's the experiences that brings us value to life. Um, and yeah, I just love that sentence. It was a long time since I heard it or read it myself, but uh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I found it actually like in what you're saying is basically the way talk to me is really saying we are doing all of this to make our bodies more capable of experiencing more, almost like the more the more. um
Yeah, and you don't have to differentiate. I mean, you can train and move your body to experience what you experience in the moment when you train, but you
yeah,
can also use that to enhance the experience outside of that. So you don't have to choose. That's also a belief that
yes,
for some reason, or for many reasons, people latch onto, especially when it comes to physical activity, that you have to choose. You don't have to
no,
choose. You have a lot of time. Hopefully, you'll live a long time. So you have a lot of time to to not only choose your path, but to make that quite wide and to invite other people to walk along you.
yeah, yeah. This is also some, let's say, my limiting belief is that I always felt like I need to have it now, and I can't wait to experience it differently, because what if I'm not there? Almost like this feeling of like of lurking death. And then I feel like then you're just running, 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 but then you're just like, well, the average person lives that much. I'm now 30. I have lived this much. So there is probably a potential to experience something later in life. So there is no need to rush in a way, to
Definitely not.
experience.
And even if it, like, worst case scenario, I guess this also comes down to a little bit of your belief about what happens after life. But for me, at least, worst case scenario, and if I don't have the amount of years that I think I have, well, then I won't know about it still. So it
Yes.
doesn't matter. So that shouldn't inform my decision making.
Exactly, exactly. And I was curious because you have a very interesting way of exploring the world with your introspection. So, are you aware of how does your thought process look like? Are you a person that is very linear and focused on a topic, or are you a person who has a lot of ideas but you are able to somehow capture them? How does that look inside from your own perception?
Oh, yes, and yes. I mean, that's I think that's a struggle for most people to kind of uh, choose which direction or which thought you want to explore, and then and be courageous enough to give that time. Because the when it comes to thoughts and or my life, because I live a quite fortunate life, one of the major issues is that I have too many options, which make it hard to make a decision. um, so I would say I'm aware of that, and I think I'm like everyone else. For like 99%, you and me are the same, but that 1% is what makes me me. So having said that, yeah, I have all of these thoughts, but I think I've become better at respecting and honoring myself. So I set boundaries for myself and for those around me when I want to pursue something, whether it be a question or a project for work. So I can be pretty clear that I have my to-do list and I have my not to-do list. And I know where I work the best, so I try to put myself in that environment. And then I try not to put other people, or I try to make other people aware of, okay, this is my space now. So, because I think that's basically what I can do with what I have. And it doesn't mean that it will work or that I will come to some sort of an answer or solution or product, but I think it will at least increase the possibility of me doing so. Uh, but yeah, my it might sound that I have a great grasp on who I am and what I think, but my thoughts are all over the place too. Uh, so it's an ongoing, everyday. I don't want to say battle because it feels like I'm there's some sort of clinch between me and my thoughts, but process of trying to understand myself and make a choice and hopefully live and being content with that choice.
And I'm also curious in that regard, um, with the intentionality you put around yourself, because I'm constantly looking at your at your rings,
Yeah.
and and how much actually I feel like everything that you do has a certain purpose. And I'm just wondering, uh, what was the process that kind of helped you to build up to that point of full, well, full consciousness, but kind of building a conscious life?
Mm, you know what? I can't really remember. It's
Mm,
just, I think it might have been always present in a way. And it's been more about accepting, acknowledging that I can I can either do something that will help me along the way, or I can leave that up to chance. So as you mentioned, I have a set of rings in my living room, which creates an environment that encourages me to act in a certain way. That doesn't mean I will do it, but it will increase the probability of me doing so. And and yeah, that's just been an ongoing process to create that environment that encourages me to act in the way that I would like to act. And that also means uh, choosing which friends you want to surround yourself with. So this is something that I would encourage everyone to do if they are comfortable enough to do so, because it could be quite a scary thing. And it is to do an inventory list of the relations you have and the people you spend time with. And then you put them into four categories, like the closest inner circle, the people that are conducive for growth and for revealing who you could be and who you want to be. Then the people that are like, yeah, the next circle. Then you have the acquaintances, and then you have the bin. And you might be, when you ask yourself the tough questions, it might be the case that you need to put your best friend in the bin because you live on past merits. um, and I did that a couple of years ago, and that also gave me like, whoa, wait, if I intentionally create the environment to surround myself with these people, it's more probable that I will act in this way, and it's more probable that I will grow in this way. And you can do that with every area of your life. And it's not easy. It sure as hell isn't easy,
yeah,
but it
definitely.
could be worth it.
Yeah, I really like that advice even for myself, because I have been kind of someone who is accepting of all the makeup and never really questioning how does that impact me and what kind of behavior does that drive in me, because
Yeah,
I always saw myself as inseparable from others, but in a way that intentionality comes from you separating from others, kind of
yeah.
talking to yourself and then going back and engaging with the others in a different way, I guess.
Yeah, one of my, I think this thought, or a part of this thought, actually came from a friend of mine who's really made a huge impact in the way I think and act. And it is when he said that sentence, like he said it in the way that he wants interactions that are conducive for growth, and I just changed interactions for relations. But the key word is conducive. Like,
Yeah.
do we help each other grow? And if not, then what are the reasons that I should spend my time and effort with this thing or that person? Sure, it's quite scary to leave that space open to nothing, but you leave it open to be able to fill that with something else. Um, so that is a sentence that really, like, it's present in my life. Is this conducive for growth?
And talking about growth, and also I had this question a little bit in relation to the previous one. Um, you are building your own business, and or you are working in some somewhat entrepreneurial manner, and being who you are, a person that really deeply wants to help people, what is it that helps you to put good boundaries and actually value your time and effort that is appropriate to the time and effort you have put into building up yourself?
Um, to be honest, I'm in the process of kind of working from the other side. So I got so good at setting boundaries. I actually said no more than what was good for me, and I need to say yes to life more often. So at this very moment, yeah, I come from the other direction. I'm really good at setting boundaries, and it has a great value. But I think freedom comes from letting go of those boundaries and experiencing what happens and being. Um, yeah, so
That's quite interesting from someone coming from the opposite
yeah.
extreme. Okay, so I think we have exhausted a lot of topics, and I think there will be potentially a part two because you're growing and growing and growing. But I would just want to end up with this kind of rapid fire questions.
Go ahead.
Uh, One of them is what is a book, a present, or an idea, one of the three or all three, that you like to gift the most?
Oh, this will not be a rapid fire.
Ah, okay. Well, I don't think anything is rapid fire with you, but we can
No.
just do it the way it is.
I'm gonna try to cut it short and not go on tangents. So I would say um, it's I don't have one. I have some books or some products or ideas that I would like to give people a lot, but I've tried to, and I've realized that um, they are not at the place where they need to be, where they would benefit from this. So it's just my ego that wants to say, "Hey, this helped me so much. Here, take it." And I'm like, no, I do that for me. So I have nothing that I feel like, okay, this is something I should give to everyone. Uh, but if
I
I
mean,
were to recommend one book that I would like to give to people, it would be Man's Search for Meaning with Viktor Frankl.
Franco.
It's
Yeah.
just great, and I think I read it like once every year or 18 months because every time it's something there.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And what is an absurd thing that about you that not many people know about?
Mm, I don't know. I think I'm quite open with myself, and then I don't think I have a lot of absurd things. I mean, there's a lot of things that people say that is absurd, but most people know about them. Like spending an hour or two a day trying to stand on my hands, that for most people that would be absurd. For me, it is what it is. Uh, but I don't think I have any real like nah.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
And then, what kind of compliments do you like to receive, if any?
You know what? I'm gonna go back to the former question because
Ah,
I have
yes, go
one
for it.
that most people don't know about me, and it is that I've basically had uh, the same song stuck in my head for about 15, 16 years now. And it might be just that I've told myself that it's stuck there, and that's the reason it's stuck there. But I sing it every week, a few times, and my best friend, which is a colleague of mine too, he always like I can see his soul dying a little bit because he's like we went to high school together, so he's heard me ever since. And it's if I could turn back time with the share.
Oh my God.
Um, so that's something that's been going on every week for 15, 16 years now. That's a little absurd.
I mean, I really like this part because it also talks about our humanity. And it's always fun to hear what is, yeah, what is the specific of you
Yeah.
that make you a little bit, yeah, in a way
Yeah.
different or weird.
Mhm.
And one of the two last things is what has become more and what has become less important to you with age and maturation.
Mm, uh, oh, that's a good question. I think what's become more important with my age is myself. Um, I think especially from like 20 to 30, it was mostly about being there for other people. And now it's more about being there for me so I can be there for other people. So that's quite a big change in my life, I would say.
And the last one is what would you like to ask yourself? Something that you know you are thinking and you're like, oh, almost if just if I had the voice to say this, but no one really asked me about this, so I won't bother sharing it. So what is it that you kind of feel like you really want to share, but you didn't have the chance to be asked for?
Oh, I think that the most impactful question that I could receive that would probably be life changing if people ask me that on a daily basis is what are you excited about? Uh, because I feel like it's like with many things. We when we get reminded of something, we actually stop to think about it, and when we think about it, we're like, hey, oh, I forgot it. I'm actually quite excited about this. And excitement as an emotion, I think it brings it can really change you in like a split second in how you approach the situation. So that's something that uh, I would like to be asked more often.
I think from now on, I will actually go and intentionally tell people to do that for me.
Yeah.
It is a very good point because it's something I personally ask other people. Like, does
Mm.
this make you excited? Why does this make you excited? And then this kind of starts like a snowball in the heads. But yeah, it's true that I don't get the question often, so
Yeah,
it's really good.
and the one thing is, so I'm quite happy to be bilingual because I think this Swedish word for excitement is just we don't use it. It's not a so people would never ask me here in Stockholm like the same question. Um, so here it would just be weird to get it because you don't use the word. But in English, it feels like it's a lower barrier to ask that question. Uh,
Mm,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, Misha, thank you so much for your time. I was also would like to acknowledge everything you're doing, and I really am grateful to learn from you and to have this really significant chunk of your time. And I really look forward to see who you are going to become.
Yeah, I want to say thank you. As I mentioned, I'm in a quite of a long phase of being productive. Uh, so I haven't really asked myself this question in more than half a year. So it's been really beneficial to get these questions and to think about it and to articulate them. So it's been really valuable for me as well. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Amazing. I mean, you can see by the smile on my face that it's really nice when you get a compliment like this.
No, it's been great,
Okay.
and I'm looking forward to part two.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think we're done, but wow, that was amazing.
Yeah, that was a it was a good talk.
I was just impressed. I just want to come to that point of thinking about a wife and like
Yeah.
maybe not having, because I'm at the exact same place and it's
Mhm.
fucking difficult.
It's
I'm
really
like, oh my God, because I was as well like, since I know myself, I am
difficult.
like family, family, family. Like, and everything I do around it is not because like, you know, I love my work, I love science, I love moving my body and all of these things, but it's just at the end, I'm doing this almost as if like for that non-existent child of mine. Like, because I want to be that person that will bring these things to the child. And
Mhm.
and somehow like also not finding someone where you feel like I can build
Yeah.
a home for that imaginary
Yeah.
child that will be healthy is so discouraging in a way,
Yeah, the tricky part is that it's almost like you have no say in the matter.
Yes,
Most people you can, I mean, you
yes,
could try to increase the probability by meeting more people, but that doesn't
yes,
really, it's like it wouldn't really guarantee you anything. So you're really helpless in this, and you just have to kind of hope. You can't even trust
yes,
it because it might not even
yes,
happen.
yeah. And in a way, I
Yeah,
hate hope. Like, hope is something
yeah,
that I really don't like because it really is the only place where you're like, I have no control over it.
yeah.
And it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's quite fun. So I'm actually getting a puppy in like 4 weeks. So that's at least something.
Yes, I
Maybe
was thinking about the same. I was thinking about getting a puppy as well, but then I realized I'm not at the place in my life because I live in London and like in a shared flat and on. So I'm like, okay, at least eventually I'll have a puppy and that's it. But but it's just so like someone who has so much like to share inside, like you have so much to give, and you're like it's just this like not being able to have another person to give it to.
yeah,
It just feels empty. I don't know. Uh,
yeah, I understand you. And as I said, like all we can do is hope. And
yeah,
yeah, it sounds
I
so.
know.
Hope is supposed to be a positive feeling, but right now it's like, yeah,
No, no, no. I mean, I just wanted to share this on a very human level because it was like, oh my God, like, there's literally not much that is in your control.
Mhm.
But this, like, I don't know about you, but for me, it's just like almost like the feeling, when it's there,
Mhm.
what it will feel like. That like easiness of conversation and openness and actually everything you're describing, but then in a relationship and being
Yeah,
conductive to your growth and all these kind of things. And then it's just, yeah. And when it's not there, you're like, it's still missing. It's still a
yeah,
search.
yeah. I've been trying to less and less search for it. Although I maybe it's also a little bit like because of the pandemic, so it gives you an easy way to not have to invest in things because you can be like, but it's hard now. We're not
Yeah.
meeting new people, so um,
Yeah.
see, we'll
Yeah.
see.
Anyways, I don't want to think more of your time, but yeah, thank you so much for the
Great.
conversation.
I'm
And
looking forward to yeah. This was great. Thank you.
amazing. Yeah, well, keep in touch. And I guess if the pandemic is over, you're always welcome
Woohoo.
to come to fly to
Yeah,
London.
yeah. I will
Amazing.
someday. I will. Yeah. Okay. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye, Misha. You have just heard the story of Micha Bakker, a movement coach with more than 10 years of coaching experience. He loves training, and his guiding principle is that being good at training is cool, but being a good human is even cooler. If you want to work with him or get to know him better, visit his Instagram page at human.mvmnt. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and please share, like, and subscribe so that these stories can reach more people.